Christmas in Aurora, Illinois was always cold, but inside our house, the warmth usually came from more than just the oven. That morning, the kitchen was a mess of flour and spilled cinnamon, my hands sticky from rolling dough, the air thick with the scent of honey ham roasting. The plastic tree in the living room blinked in the corner, its lights reflecting off the windows. It should have felt cozy, but I moved through the motions as if on autopilot, a part of me hoping, maybe this year, we'd manage to make it through one holiday without an argument. I could sense the tension even before we sat down for dinner. Dad snapped at me when I asked him to set the table. "Can't you see I'm busy?" he barked, flipping through the TV channels, never settling on one. Mom flitted from kitchen to dining room, smoothing her apron, straightening silverware, her eyes darting between Dad and me, as if she was afraid we'd both explode. Lily hovered at my elbow, barely saying a word, her fingers worrying the hem of her red sweater. Looking back now, I realized the warning signs had been there for weeks, maybe even years. Dad's temper had grown shorter every season, his voice louder, his patience thinner. Mom's laughter was rare, often replaced by nervous glances and tight smiles. Lily, once chatty and bright, seemed to fold into herself more each day. But on Christmas, I convinced myself, things would be different. People are kinder in December, right? That's what all the carols promise. We ate by candlelight, the radio softly playing Silent Night in the background, though no one was really listening. The table was crowded with the usual spread, mashed potatoes piled high, golden brown rolls, ham glazed just right. I'd worked hard on the cinnamon rolls, hoping they'd be a small treat, but when I passed them to Dad, he just pushed the plate away. Conversation sputtered. Mom asked Lily about her favorite teacher. Lily shrugged. I asked if anyone wanted more gravy. No one answered. Dad carved another slice of ham, his fork clattering against the plate louder than the music. The only other sound was the wind rattling the kitchen window, making the house seem emptier than usual. Halfway through dinner, just as I was cutting into my ham, Dad put his fork down with a deliberate clatter. He looked at me, really looked at me, like I was something stuck to his shoe. For a second, I thought maybe he was about to complain about the food, but his face was set, unreadable. "You're a burden," he said flatly, his voice cutting through the quiet. "You can't live with us anymore." I blinked, not sure I'd heard him right. The world seemed to tilt for a moment, the Christmas lights blurred. Mom let out a nervous laugh, like maybe this was all some cruel joke. But Dad didn't even crack a smile. He just stared, waiting for my reaction. My mind raced. I was 25. Sure, maybe I'd stayed home longer than some, but it wasn't out of laziness. I worked. I paid most of the bills. Mom only worked part-time at the grocery store, and Dad hadn't held a steady job since the warehouse closed. I was the reason the lights stayed on and food made it to the table, but suddenly, none of that seemed to matter. For a long moment, no one moved. The knife slipped from my fingers and clattered onto my plate. Lily stared at me, wide-eyed, fork halfway to her mouth. Mom opened and closed her mouth, like she wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. "Did you hear me?" Dad pressed, his voice louder now. "You've overstayed your welcome. You need to move out." I swallowed hard, the taste of ham turning bitter in my mouth. I wanted to yell, to ask how he could say that after everything I'd done, but the words tangled in my throat. Mom finally found her voice. "Maybe we should talk about this later," she started, but Dad cut her off. "No. This is my house. I make the rules. She's done here." His tone was final, the gavel coming down. Lily put her fork down carefully. She was only 16, but I could see the fear in her eyes. If this could happen to me, what about her? what about us? I drew a shaky breath, trying to keep the room from spinning. I wasn't going to beg. If they wanted me gone, fine. But they weren't ready for what that really meant. All right, I said, quietly. Dad sat back, smug, like he'd won something. Mom kept picking at her potatoes, her eyes glassy. I stood, pushing back my chair so it scraped across the tile. I glanced at Lily, who was still frozen, her face pale. I tried to give her a reassuring nod, but my heart was pounding. She was the only one I still cared about at that table. Without another word, I gathered my plate, carried it to the sink, and washed it in silence. The rest of them ate as if nothing had happened. Mom asked Dad if he wanted more gravy. Lily didn't touch her food. I didn't wait for dessert, didn't look back. Instead, I went straight to my room, closed the door, and locked it. Inside, I let my knees buckle and sat on the edge of my bed. The house felt impossibly quiet, every sound magnified, the ticking of my alarm clock, the muffled laughter from a Christmas special on TV. I glanced at the pile of unopened gifts in the corner. My stocking still hung by the window, half filled with cheap chocolates and a gas station gift card. It all seemed absurd now. My hand shook as I opened my closet, pulling out the duffel bag I'd kept for emergencies, though I never thought Christmas would count. I moved in slow motion, folding clothes, gathering my essentials. Every now and then, I'd stop and stare at the photos on my dresser, childhood birthdays, summer pool parties, Lily's 6th grade graduation. We'd once been a family, or at least I'd believed so. A dull ache grew in my chest as I realized I wasn't sad. Not really. Maybe just empty. There's a saying Mom used to tell me, in life, not every open door is a welcome. Tonight, I finally understood. Downstairs, I could hear muffled voices, Dad still talking, Mom's tone pleading. Lily's footsteps, soft and hesitant, up and down the hall. No one came to my door. Before I turned out the light, I caught sight of the Christmas pie I'd baked that morning. It sat untouched on my desk, the crust still golden, the filling untouched. I thought about taking it with me, but what was the point? With trembling hands, I zipped my bag, double-checked my wallet and phone, and sat on the bed for a moment longer, just breathing. Tomorrow, I would be gone. I didn't know where I'd end up, or what would come next. But for now, all I could do was close the door on what had once been home. I pressed my palm against the door, feeling the cool wood beneath my skin, and whispered goodbye to the girl I used to be. The sun rose on December 26th as if it had something to prove, blazing through the frosted glass of my bedroom window, but the warmth didn't reach me. I lay awake long before the light, listening to the old house creak and groan, to the low hum of the heater and the distant rumble of Dad snoring down the hall. In the corner, a suitcase sat half-opened, swallowing pieces of my life. The smell of coffee drifted up from the kitchen, someone trying to keep routine, to ground themselves in something normal. I'd always imagined leaving home would feel like freedom, like possibility. Maybe a big move to a city, a job, adventure. But here I was, 25 years old, packing in silence before dawn, my heart heavy as I folded shirts and tucked them into the gaps between old photo albums and a tangle of charging cords. Everything I owned seemed suddenly small, as if the life I'd built in this house could fit inside a couple of bags and a battered laptop case. There was a moment, kneeling by my bed, when my resolve nearly slipped. My fingers lingered over the knotted friendship bracelet Lily made me in 5th grade, the faded concert ticket I'd hidden in a jewelry box. The smell of cinnamon from the leftover rolls in the kitchen hit me, a sudden memory of better Christmases, of sticky fingers and laughter around this same table. I pressed the bracelet into my pocket and zipped the suitcase shut, afraid that if I looked back too long, I'd never leave. Footsteps creaked in the hallway. The doorknob turned, and Lily slipped in, her face streaked with tears, eyes red from a sleepless night. She wore my old college sweatshirt, the sleeves falling over her hands. "Are you really going?" she whispered, voice shaking. I nodded, throat too tight for words. The silence pressed in between us, heavy and sharp. For a moment, neither of us moved. Lily knelt next to my bag and started fussing with the zipper, then reached into her own coat pocket. She pulled out her favorite scarf, the one with blue stripes I'd given her last winter, still smelling faintly of her shampoo, and tucked it between my sweaters. "For when you get cold," she said, not meeting my eyes. I sat down beside her, pulled her close. "I'm so sorry, Lil," I murmured, voice rough. "If I could take you with me, I would. But you're still in school. You know Mom and Dad won't let you leave." The words tasted bitter and empty. She wiped her nose on her sleeve, cheeks blotchy. "It's not fair. You pay for everything. Why are they doing this?" Her voice broke at the end, as if she still hoped I might have an answer. I shook my head, stroking her hair the way Mom used to when we were little. "Sometimes people can't see what's right in front of them. Sometimes, they just forget how to be kind." For a moment, I just held her, listening to our twin heartbeats, hers fluttering, mine thudding slow and steady like the ticking clock on my dresser. A soft knock sounded at the door. Mom's voice, barely more than a whisper, "Emily?" She didn't come in. I glanced up and saw her silhouette in the hallway, her hand pressed against the doorframe. She looked so small, wrapped in her old flannel robe. Her lips moved, but no words came out. There was nothing left to say. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of Dad's back disappearing into the kitchen. He didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge me. The old coffee pot gurgled and hissed on the counter, its aroma filling the air, a strange comfort on a morning when nothing else felt familiar. Lily squeezed my hand one last time. "Promise you'll call," she pleaded. "I promise," I said, willing myself to be strong. "And you, take care of yourself. Stay out of his way." I tried to smile, but it came out crooked. She nodded, then darted out of the room, the door closing softly behind her. I listened to her footsteps fading down the hall. The weight of leaving settled onto my shoulders, colder than any winter wind outside. I picked up my phone and sat on the edge of the bed, fingers flying over the screen. Quietly, I logged into every account tied to the house, utilities, internet, even the Netflix subscription. I removed my name, canceled autopay, cut every financial tether. It felt both petty and necessary, a small claim to my own life, a way to remind myself I didn't owe them any more than I already had. I pulled on my boots and shrugged into my coat, pausing by the window. Outside, the world was muffled under a dusting of snow, the street empty and still. Our neighbor's porch light glowed yellow, reflecting off the icy sidewalk. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting to see if I'd really go through with it. I lugged my bags down the narrow staircase, the suitcase bumping against each step. In the entryway, Mom hovered, twisting her hands. Her eyes searched my face, looking for something, regret, anger, maybe forgiveness. I couldn't give her any of those things, not today. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Instead, she reached out and brushed a stray hair from my cheek, the gesture automatic, motherly. "You have everything?" she asked. I nodded. "I put a sandwich in your bag," she said softly. "And a bottle of water. It's a long drive." For a heartbeat, I almost broke. I wanted her to pull me back, to beg me to stay, to say it was all a mistake. Instead, we stood in silence, the words dying between us. Sometimes love is just a series of small, unfinished gestures. I turned the knob, the cold metal biting into my palm. I hesitated, listening for Dad, but he was nowhere to be seen. The front door creaked open, letting in a gust of icy air. My boots crunched on the frozen porch, the world outside bright and sharp. At the curb, my old Honda waited, its windshield frosted over. I set my bags in the back seat, shivering. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the house, at the sagging roof, the faded shutters, the window where I'd watched so many Christmas mornings. A lifetime of memories collapsed into that single, silent moment. I slid into the driver's seat, clutching the steering wheel as if it might steady me. The smell of coffee lingered in my coat, mixing with the faint scent of Lily's scarf. I started the engine, waited for the heater to sputter to life. The frost on the windshield blurred the house into a watercolor of gray and white. Slowly, I backed out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I saw Mom step onto the porch, wrapping her arms around herself, her face hidden. Lily pressed her forehead to her bedroom window, waving with both hands. Dad never appeared. As I reached the end of the street, the house slipped from view. For a moment, all I felt was emptiness, a hollowness where hope used to be. But as the highway opened up in front of me, something else crept in, a thin thread of relief. I was free, in a way I'd never been before, even if I had no idea what came next. I drove for miles, the landscape flattening out into winter fields and snow-flecked fences. The radio played quietly, some old country song about moving on. My heart pounded as I pulled off the highway, turning into the parking lot of Tracy's apartment complex. I sat for a moment, watching my breath cloud the air. This was it. No more familiar walls, no more family dinners, no more knowing exactly who I was supposed to be. Just the next chapter, waiting, cold and unknown, but mine to write. Tracy's couch is the lumpy kind that swallows you up in the middle of the night, all faded floral patterns and mysterious squeaks when you shift. Still, there's something comforting about it. No one shouts here, no one glares at me over dinner, no one calls me a burden. In the stillness of her tiny living room, with city lights flickering just outside the window, I almost start to breathe again. The first night, Tracy welcomes me with a grin, pushing aside a pile of laundry to make space. Ignore the mess, she laughs, tossing a throw pillow at my head. The place has personality. She's wearing mismatched socks and a hoodie with a coffee stain, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. The kitchen smells like takeout pizza and coffee grounds. Art prints cover the walls, bold colors, swirling lines, a riot of energy that matches Tracy's voice. She hands me a paper plate loaded with greasy pepperoni slices. Eat. You look like you haven't had a real meal in days. I try to protest, but my stomach rumbles and Tracy just laughs, flopping onto the other end of the couch. Her boyfriend, Mark, pokes his head out of the bedroom long enough to wave hello, then disappears again, mumbling something about a late-night shift. We eat with our knees pressed together, talking about nothing and everything. Tracy tells stories from work, her boss's obsession with motivational posters, the time she spilled coffee on a client's lap. She's quick to laugh, quick to tease, and when she senses my energy flagging, she fills the silence with stories about old college parties, about sneaking into midnight movies, about all the ways she's managed to screw up and survive. For the first time in a long time, I find myself smiling, even laughing, though the ache underneath doesn't disappear. Each time I glance at my phone, the screen glows with missed calls from Mom, a text from Lily, "Are you okay?" I don't answer. I can't, not yet. At bedtime, Tracy hands me a scratchy blanket and a mug of herbal tea, the steam curling in the chilly air. No pressure, she says softly, squeezing my shoulder. Stay as long as you need. I've got extra toothpaste in the bathroom, and if Mark steals your snacks, just yell. She winks. He's mostly harmless. I curl up on the couch, listening to the hum of the fridge, the distant siren somewhere out on the street. My body aches in unfamiliar places, and the silence here feels different, not heavy or hostile, just new. Through the window, city lights blink red and gold, cars moving like fireflies below. I remember when sleepovers meant movies and whispered secrets. Now, every night away from home feels like exile, and I wonder how long it will take for this new life to feel real. Morning comes too soon. Tracy is already up, hair wild, cradling a mismatched mug that says, "Don't talk to me until I've had my coffee." She offers me one with a cartoon sloth on it. "Coffee?" she asks, holding the pot like a magic wand. "Or tea? Or hot cocoa?" I've got options. I wrap my hands around the mug, letting the heat chase away the last chill of the night. We sit in the cramped kitchen, sunlight slanting through blinds, talking about what comes next. Tracy is practical. She fires up her old laptop and helps me start searching for jobs, scrolling through listings for admin work, data entry, even a posting for a barista at the corner cafe. I stare at the screen, overwhelmed. Each job description feels like a challenge I'm not sure I'm ready for. I haven't had a real interview in years, I admit, voice small. What if nobody wants to hire me? Tracy bumps my knee with hers. You survived living with your dad. You can handle a cranky manager and a coffee machine. She grins, then softens. Seriously, Em. You're smart. You're reliable. And you're not alone, okay? We'll figure this out together. I nod, grateful, but anxiety coils in my stomach. For the rest of the morning, I fill out applications, tweak my resume, send out emails. The city outside is alive, horns honking, children shouting, the distant thump of someone moving furniture upstairs. Each time I hit submit, it feels like sending a piece of myself into the void. Around noon, my phone buzzes again, another voicemail from Mom. I delete it without listening. A new message pops up from Lily, "Miss you. House is weird. Let me know you're okay." My fingers hover over the keyboard, but I can't bring myself to reply. The distance between us feels wider than the miles I've driven. Tracy interrupts my spiral with a clatter of dishes. "Let's get out of here," she declares. "You need fresh air, and I need caffeine that doesn't taste like burnt shoes." She drags me down the block to a cafe with crooked tables and a bell over the door. The barista knows her order by heart. Tracy waves at a group of regulars near the window, their laughter spilling into the street. We sit by the window, sipping coffee from chipped mugs. Tracy chats about nothing in particular, pulling me gently back into the present. She tells me stories about the neighborhood, how the mural on the wall was painted by local kids, how the bakery next door makes the best cherry pie in town, how every street has its own rhythm, its own flavor. Eventually, I let myself relax. The cafe is warm and bright, filled with the smell of fresh pastries and the hum of conversation. For a moment, I almost forget the weight I've been carrying. Then, in the quiet, something cracks open inside me. I set down my mug, press my palms together, and finally let the tears come. Tracy slides into the seat beside me, not saying a word, just holding my hand. I let myself cry for the first time, really cry, since I left home. For all the anger and confusion, for the guilt of leaving Lily behind, for the ache of not belonging anywhere. The release is messy, ugly, but it feels like the beginning of something new. We walk home as dusk settles over the city, the streetlights flickering on one by one. Tracy talks about her plans for the weekend, about an art show she wants to visit, about how we could order takeout from the Thai place around the corner. I let her words wash over me, comforted by her easy presence. That night, as I settle onto the couch, I hear my phone buzz again. I ignore it at first, but curiosity gets the better of me. It's a text from Lily, just 5 words, "The power's out." Mom's freaking out. My chest tightens. Even here, in the safe cocoon of Tracy's apartment, the past has a way of finding me. I stare out the window at the city lights, wondering what tomorrow will bring, the ache of not belonging settling somewhere deep inside. But for the first time, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, things can change. It's strange, the way homesickness creeps in, not just missing the familiar walls, but missing the idea of family, the hope that somewhere, someone wants you back. I woke up on Tracy's couch, sore and groggy, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of her perfume. The city outside was gray with rain, tapping lightly against the glass. My phone blinked with new notifications, but I hesitated before picking it up. Lately, I wasn't sure what hurt more, missing my family, or realizing they didn't seem to miss me. I brewed a cup of coffee in Tracy's tiny kitchen, savoring the warmth. The act was grounding: pour, stir, sip, repeat. I scrolled through my banking app, anxiety prickling under my skin. The numbers stared back at me, smaller than they'd ever been. I had enough for a few weeks: rent to Tracy, a couple bags of groceries, gas. After that, it was a blank page. I sighed, thinking of all the bills I'd left behind: the Netflix account, the utilities, the internet. One by one, I opened the apps and removed my name, fingers trembling as I tapped confirm for the last time. Out the window, rain streaked the city in wavering lines, neon reflections blurring on the pavement below. Tracy emerged from her room, hair in wild waves, carrying her own mug. She leaned against the doorframe and watched me for a moment. "You sleeping at all?" she asked, her tone gentle. "Some," I lied, but the fatigue in my bones gave me away. She dropped a hand on my shoulder, squeezing. "You know, it's okay to be a mess. You're allowed." I tried to smile, but it faltered. I don't know how to do this. I keep thinking about when we were kids, playing house with Lily, pretending to be adults. It was so easy then. Now it's just real." Tracy nodded, understanding. "Growing up is mostly just improvising and hoping you don't trip over the furniture." By mid-morning, I found myself huddled at a corner table in the coffee shop down the street, hunched over Tracy's old laptop. The Wi-Fi was spotty, but I needed to get out of the apartment, to feel less like a guest, more like someone with purpose. Outside, the rain blurred the street, making the world feel small and distant. I spent hours filling out job applications, scrolling through postings: office assistant, cashier, dog walker. Each submit felt like tossing a message in a bottle out to sea. The ache in my shoulders deepened as the hours passed, hope and frustration mingling in equal measure. Every so often, my phone buzzed with texts from Lily. Each message painted a darker picture of the house I'd left behind. Dad's yelling again. Power's still out. Mom's crying. Did you really cancel everything? It's so cold here. Wish you were home. I hate it. I read them over and over, guilt settling deep inside. I wanted to tell her it would get better, that I was doing the right thing, but I didn't know if I believed it myself. Instead, I sent short replies: hang in there. I'm sorry. I love you. Mom called 3 times before lunch, leaving voicemails that I deleted without listening. Her number flashing on the screen was enough to make my chest tighten. I knew she'd be asking me to come back, or worse, begging for help. I couldn't face it, not yet. I tried to lose myself in the busy sounds of the cafe, the hiss of espresso machines, the gentle clatter of cups, a couple bickering quietly at the next table. I watched raindrops race each other down the windowpane and wondered how my life had narrowed so quickly to this small patch of city, this moment of waiting. When Tracy finished her shift, she found me still at the cafe, hunched over my laptop. She ordered us each a pastry, a show of solidarity. "You need to take care of yourself too, you know," she said. "Have you thought about talking to someone? My job has a counselor, she's free, no judgment. Sometimes it helps just to say things out loud." I hesitated. "I don't know. I feel like I should handle this myself. Even the strongest people need help, Em." "Seriously? At least think about it?" I nodded, not ready to promise, but grateful for the offer. Tracy always knew when to push and when to back off. Sometimes, kindness is just sitting beside someone, making sure they know you're there. By late afternoon, we returned to the apartment, our shoes squeaking against the linoleum. Tracy busied herself making dinner, filling the space with the sizzle of onions and the comforting scent of garlic. I sat on the edge of the couch, scrolling aimlessly through social media, avoiding the news, avoiding my own thoughts. That's when my phone vibrated with a notification from my bank. "Suspicious activity detected. Please verify your identity." My stomach dropped. I opened the app and scanned the recent activity, multiple failed logins, an attempted password reset. A cold sweat prickled my skin. Dad. He must have found that old notebook Mom kept by the computer, the one with all our passwords. I changed them all in a rush, heart pounding, locking every account tighter than before. Tracy came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Everything okay?" she asked. I shook my head, voice thin. "My dad tried to get into my bank account. I can't believe it." She sat beside me, laying a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to face this alone," she said softly. It was raining harder now, the sound louder than before, filling the silence between us. I leaned into Tracy's warmth, letting her steady me. The ache of not belonging, of being cut loose from the world I knew, threatened to swallow me whole. But here, in this small apartment, there was at least one person who wanted me to stay. The apartment felt safe, cocooned from the chaos outside, but something about the night was restless. Tracy peered out the window, brow furrowed. Her voice was quiet, tense. "Emily, someone's downstairs." I stiffened, heart hammering in my chest. Through the rain-streaked glass, I could just make out a figure standing near the building's entrance, face obscured by a hood. The past, it seemed, wasn't done with me yet. When my dad wants something, he doesn't knock. He pounds, the same way he's always done, on doors, on tables, on whatever barrier stands between him and what he thinks he deserves. That night, his anger thundered down the hallway of Tracy's apartment building, louder than the rain, louder than the heartbeat in my ears. We heard the pounding before we saw him, a deep, relentless sound, echoing off the dimly lit walls. Tracy paused, spatula in hand, her eyes darting to me. My stomach twisted. For a second, I told myself it was a stranger, a drunk neighbor, anything but him. But the voice that bellowed through the thin door was unmistakable. "Emily! Open up! I know you're in there." His words were slurred with rage, his fist landing again and again. I could hear shuffling behind doors down the hall, the low murmur of neighbors wondering if they should get involved. My hand shook as I grabbed my phone, fingers fumbling over the screen. Tracy didn't hesitate. She dialed 911, her voice surprisingly calm as she gave the address. "There's a man pounding on our door, yelling, threatening, my friend's father," she said, her free hand wrapping tight around my wrist. "Please hurry." The noise only grew louder. "You think you can just walk away?" Dad roared. You ruined everything. You owe us. His words crashed over me, raw and ugly. I could picture him on the other side, red-faced, fists clenched. For years, I'd tried to keep the peace, to smooth things over, to carry the weight of everyone's mistakes. But now, with Tracy beside me and the neighbors peeking out from behind their blinds, I realized that what I'd been calling family drama was something else entirely. This wasn't the stuff of sitcoms or holiday arguments, this was real, and it was dangerous. The pounding stopped as sirens pierced the night air. I heard the heavy steps of police boots in the stairwell, the sharp rap of authority. "Sir, step away from the door," someone shouted. For a moment, silence. Then Dad's voice, lower now, pleading, cajoling, "She's my daughter. She has to help us." Doors opened down the hallway. Faces appeared in doorways, watching as the officers cuffed my dad and led him, protesting, down the stairs. His face twisted with hatred and humiliation, but his eyes locked on mine, cold, wild, blaming. "You did this, Emily," he spat as they took him away. I couldn't move. Tracy wrapped her arm around me, her warmth an anchor. Blue and red police lights flashed through the windows, painting the walls in wild, shifting color. I watched the old family photo on my phone screen, smiling faces from a different life, and tried to remember when things had felt safe. The officers took a statement, their voices gentle but businesslike. I answered every question in a daze, words coming out flat and slow. "Yes, he's my father. Yes, he threatened me. Yes, I want to press charges." The reality of it all settled in, heavy as lead. After they left, Tracy made tea, 2 mismatched mugs, hands trembling as she filled them. We sat on the couch, shoulders touching, staring at nothing. The apartment felt both safer and smaller, the world outside shrunk to the glow of the police lights fading into the night. "I'm so sorry," Tracy whispered, voice thick. "No one should have to go through that." I shook my head, clutching the mug, trying to absorb its warmth. "It's not your fault," I said, though I felt responsible for every shiver of fear in this place. I never thought it would come to this." She squeezed my hand. "You're safe now. You hear me? You don't have to deal with him alone." I nodded, but inside, my thoughts spiraled. How had it come to this? I pictured Lily, alone in the dark house, Mom frantic, Dad furious. I wanted to call Lily, to hear her voice, to reassure her. My phone buzzed and, for once, I answered without hesitation. "Emily?" Lily's voice was a small whisper, full of tears. "What happened?" "Mom's crying, she says Dad's in jail. She's blaming you. She says you have to come fix it." My chest ached. "You listen to me, Lil. None of this is your fault. I'm sorry I can't be there, but I can't go back, not now, not ever. Promise me you'll be careful, okay? Keep your head down. I'll always answer if you call." She sniffled. "I'm scared. I just want things to be normal again." I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. "Me too, kiddo. But sometimes, you have to do the hard thing, even if it means starting over. I love you." We said goodbye. Tracy sat beside me, silent, letting me breathe. I stared at the old family photo on my phone, the faded smiles, the arms thrown around each other, the happiness I'd tried so hard to believe in. I realized, in that moment, that going back was no longer an option. Even for Lily, even for the memory of what used to be, there was no place left for me in that house. Somewhere outside, the last of the police cars rolled away. The night was quiet, but my mind churned. There's a peculiar kind of relief that comes after the storm, a hush, a freedom laced with sorrow. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time I was certain I wouldn't look back. Then my phone rang, Mom's number, flashing angrily on the screen. I hesitated, but answered. Her voice was sharp, cold, furious. You need to fix this, Emily. We have no money. I'm selling your things, your laptop, your books, whatever I can get for them. Don't you dare call the police on me. The words hit like ice. I tried to speak, but she hung up first. I stared at the phone, the sense of loss sinking deeper. The last of my childhood, sold off, piece by piece. Tracy placed her hand over mine, grounding me once more. In the glow of the dim lamp, I realized that the worst was behind me, but so was everything I'd once called home. It's just stuff, I told myself as I drove through the old neighborhood, though my chest ached with every mile. The sky was pewter, heavy with a late winter threat of snow, and the houses along our street looked smaller than I remembered, somehow faded, as if they'd been washed too many times and hung out to dry. I parked behind a police cruiser, the sight of it both comforting and strange. It wasn't lost on me how normal it felt to see flashing lights in front of my own house now. I glanced at my reflection in the rearview mirror, wiped my eyes, and forced myself to breathe. My hands trembled as I reached for the door handle. I kept repeating, it's just stuff. Just things. But as I stepped onto the porch, I remembered how Mom used to save everything, every childish drawing, every spelling bee certificate, every clay mug with my name scratched crooked into the side. She used to be the keeper of memories, the one who couldn't throw away even a single school photo. But all that was before. Mom was waiting by the front door, arms folded, lips pressed into a line so tight it was nearly invisible. The police officer beside her looked uncomfortable, as if he'd drawn the short straw on a quiet afternoon. Emily, Mom said, voice sharp and tired. You have 10 minutes. I stepped inside, and the cold hit me first. The heat was off, and the whole house felt hollow. Clutter lined the hall, plastic bags, boxes overflowing with mismatched things. My things. The floor creaked underfoot as I made my way to what used to be my room. The door was wide open. My bed was stripped, drawers pulled out and half empty, books and clothes piled haphazardly into a single battered box. My old soccer trophy, scuffed and missing its plaque, leaned drunkenly on the dresser. The shelf where my childhood books had lived was nearly bare. On the desk, a stack of notebooks, some mine, some Lily's, topped with a faded photograph of us from a long-ago birthday. I knelt by the box, fingers sifting through the jumble. The soft scarf Lily had given me was gone. My laptop, Mom must have already pawned it, just as she'd promised. I searched for my high school yearbook, but it wasn't there. It's just stuff, I whispered, but every missing thing felt like a small betrayal. Lily slipped into the room, her eyes wide and sad. She didn't say anything, just knelt beside me, helping me gather the few things I could carry. She pressed a note into my hand, a folded scrap of notebook paper with a quick, looping scrawl, "Don't forget I love you. Call me when you can. Lily." I slipped it into my pocket, holding back tears. I stood, box in arms, and faced Mom. She watched me with arms still crossed, eyes hard. "You left," she said flatly. "So it's ours. We needed the money." The officer cleared his throat, shifting his weight. "Ma'am, your daughter is entitled to her personal property." Mom's jaw tightened. "She doesn't live here anymore. She gave it all up." I felt anger rise, hot, unexpected, more bitter than grief. For years I'd shouldered every burden, paid every bill, given up pieces of myself to keep this family afloat. Now, what remained of my childhood had been rifled through, picked apart, parceled out. "It was never about the stuff, Mom," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "But you don't get to sell my memories. You don't get to take what's left of me just because you're angry." She scoffed, turning away. "You think you're better than us now?" I shook my head. "No. I just know I can't stay trapped here." For the first time, I felt the guilt slide off my shoulders, as if I'd set down a suitcase I'd been carrying for far too long. The officer nodded, gently steering Mom aside. "Let her gather what she needs," he said. Lily helped me carry the box to the front door. She paused, arms tight around my waist, her head pressed to my chest. "I'm going to miss you," she whispered. "I'll always be here," I promised, meaning it in the way grown-ups do, knowing that presence sometimes has to mean phone calls, letters, small acts of love from afar. I squeezed her, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, hoping she'd find her own way out, someday. The house was silent as I stepped outside, the echo of the door closing behind me bouncing through the empty halls. In that moment, I felt both light and hollow, emptied of the past, but finally free to imagine something new. I loaded the box into my trunk and slid behind the wheel. The police car pulled away, leaving me alone. My phone buzzed, screen lighting up with a message from a number I recognized all too well, Dad's old number, the one I'd blocked and unblocked a dozen times. "You'll regret this." I stared at the words, felt a chill snake down my spine. But as I glanced at the box of old books, the faded soccer trophy, Lily's note clutched in my hand, I realized that regret is only heavy if you let it settle inside you. For the first time in what felt like forever, I woke up to sunlight streaming through Tracy's kitchen window and the comforting smell of fresh coffee brewing, no tension in my chest, no heavy dread. I lingered under the covers for a few minutes, savoring the warmth and letting my mind drift. Tracy's apartment, with its mismatched chairs and perpetually humming refrigerator, had become my haven. It was early spring in Aurora, and the world outside seemed to have softened, lilacs blooming by the bus stop, birds calling from somewhere above the city's clatter, the sidewalk swept clean after a long, gray winter. I reached for my phone on the bedside table, habit pushing me to scan for any news from home, emergencies, accusations, please. Instead, only silence. I scrolled through Lily's last text, "Just another quiet night. Love you." I pressed the phone to my chest and breathed out. Sometimes, silence can be a blessing. By 8, Tracy was bustling around, pouring coffee into a chipped mug with a faded smiley face. "Big day," she grinned, pushing the mug into my hands. "New job, new you. You're gonna be great." She wore a scarf patterned with sunflowers, hair wild and happy. The insurance office was just a 15-minute walk downtown, past storefronts displaying baskets of tulips and sandwich boards for early-season farmers markets. The office itself wasn't glamorous, a squat brick building with dusty blinds and carpet that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. But it felt like a fresh start, a place where no one knew my history, where I could be whoever I chose. Ms. Carter met me at the door, her hand extended, her smile genuine and warm. She was a woman in her 50s, always in sensible shoes, with a streak of gray in her hair and a mug that read "World's Okayest Boss." She gave me a quick tour: reception, supply closet, break room, rows of humming computers. "Nothing fancy," she said, her tone light, "but if you can survive your first week, you'll fit right in." Her eyes crinkled at the corners. Training was a blur of passwords, forms, and customer calls. I stumbled, fumbled, apologized too often, but Ms. Carter never lost patience. "I was a nervous wreck my first month," she confided over lunch, pulling a homemade sandwich from a bag. "Thought I'd break the fax machine or cry every time the phone rang." She grinned. You learn. One breath at a time. You're doing better than you think, Emily. I smiled, uncertain, picking at my salad. It was hard not to feel like an imposter, as if at any minute someone would discover I didn't really belong. But Ms. Carter's presence was steadying, a kind word here, a reassuring nod there, small reminders that I was more than just my mistakes. After work, Tracy met me outside the office, bouncing with excitement. Come on, she insisted, we're celebrating. There's a market on Main and you, my friend, are getting fresh bread and sunshine. She pulled me along, her laughter contagious. The farmer's market was alive with color, stalls of handmade jewelry, piles of radishes and asparagus, a band playing folk songs under a striped tent. I let Tracy drag me from booth to booth, inhaling the scent of lilacs, warm pretzels, and something sweet from the bakery stand. Pick something, Tracy demanded, pressing a loaf of sourdough into my hands. I bought a bunch of lilacs, letting the petals brush my cheek, and found myself laughing at some silly joke Tracy made about artisan cheese. For a moment, the old ache faded, replaced by a tentative joy. That evening, Ms. Carter called to check in. First week's the hardest, she said, her voice gentle. You belong here, Emily. Everyone feels out of place sometimes. Let yourself grow. I thanked her, words catching in my throat. I realized I hadn't heard something so kind and honest in a long time. Back at the apartment, I found Lily's messages waiting for me. Home is quiet. Mom barely talks anymore. Dad's still gone. I miss you. Each word tugged at my heart, but this time I didn't feel the urge to fix everything. I replied, I miss you too. I'm proud of you. I'm here if you need me. Friday was payday. I stared at my first check, running my finger over the numbers, half expecting to feel guilt, like I owed it to my family, like I should send it home to patch another hole in their leaking boat. But I folded it into my wallet, knowing that for once, it belonged to me. I'd earned it, and that mattered. Saturday, Tracy and I sat on her tiny balcony, eating slices of fresh bread and watching the city slip toward dusk. The lilacs perfumed the air, and for the first time, I felt my body truly relax. We talked about nothing, TV shows, summer plans, where we might travel if we could save enough. As the light faded, my phone chimed with a message from Lily. Can I stay with you this summer? The question was hopeful, uncertain, a bridge between the life I'd left and the one I was building. I looked at Tracy, who grinned and shrugged, as if to say, why not? My chest filled with something like hope. I typed back, let's talk soon. I'd love that. I set the phone down, gazing at the city skyline, the last rays of sunlight catching the edges of glass and brick. I wasn't healed, not yet. But I had a job, a friend, and, for the first time, a future that felt like my own. When Lily showed up at Tracy's door with nothing but a faded backpack, her phone, and her favorite pair of sneakers dangling from one finger, I hugged her so tight she almost dropped them. Her hair was longer than I remembered, her eyes a little older, but when she smiled, I could still see the kid sister who used to chase lightning bugs with me in our old backyard. I packed light, she shrugged, breathless from the bus ride. Didn't want to give Mom a chance to say no. I made room for her on the couch, shuffling my things, wrestling with the pull-out bed, letting her claim half the dresser Tracy had cleared for us. In that crowded apartment, we invented new routines. Late-night movies with popcorn spilling into the couch cushions, half-failed attempts at baking brownies in Tracy's temperamental oven, whispered conversations while the city hummed outside our window. We took long walks along the Fox River, skipping stones, talking about everything and nothing, as if to fill in the gaps left by all the years we'd lost to family drama. I remembered, watching her toss her sneakers in a corner and flop onto the couch, how we'd once promised each other, two little girls under a blanket fort, that we'd always stick together, no matter what. I tried to be the kind of sister she needed now, not a parent, not a replacement for home, but someone who knew when to ask questions and when to just listen. That summer in Aurora was sticky with heat and possibility. Tracy, always game for an adventure, introduced Lily to the best thrift stores and showed her how to haggle for records at the Saturday flea market. Ms. Carter stopped by once or twice, bearing baskets of strawberries and a pep talk for Lily about being the first in her family to finish high school. Even the neighbors got in on the welcome, old Mrs. Fisher from downstairs sent up cookies. The twins across the hall taught Lily how to make friendship bracelets with rainbow beads. Lily landed a job at a corner diner, serving milkshakes and baskets of fries. I helped her fill out the application, coached her through her first interview, and packed her a lunch on her first day, peanut butter sandwich and a note, "You've got this. Love, M." She texted me a picture of her in the blue diner apron, grinning with pride, her ponytail crooked and messy. Some nights we stayed up late, eating freezer pops and scrolling through childhood photos on my old phone. I saw Lily's hands shake as she laughed at the goofy faces we'd made as kids. Once, after a particularly long day at the diner, she curled up beside me, eyes bright with worry. "Senior year starts soon," she whispered, "and I don't know if I can go back home. Not after this." I hugged her tighter, brushing the hair from her face. "You don't have to know yet. One day at a time, okay? We're figuring it out together." The 4th of July festival was a patchwork of fireworks, sticky lemonade, and picnic tables crowded with families. Tracy insisted we dress in red, white, and blue, and even managed to talk Ms. Carter into joining us for a few hours. We sprawled on a blanket under the fireworks, laughing as Tracy recounted her own messy family history. "Every family has scars," she said, her gaze soft. "It's what you do with them that counts. Nobody's story is perfect, girls, not even close." Lily and I held hands as the sky exploded with color, the noise echoing against the riverbank. I could feel her fear and her hope tangled together, both of us clinging to the moment for as long as it would last. A few days later, a letter arrived from home. The envelope was heavy, Mom's handwriting sharp and unmistakable. Inside, the message was as cold as it was predictable: Lily was to come back immediately, or Mom would cut off her college support. The words twisted in my chest: anger, frustration, the old ache of being punished for loving each other more than we loved the idea of family as duty. Lily stared at the letter for a long time before picking up her phone. She called Mom, voice shaking, but this time she stood her ground. "I'm not coming back just because you say so. I'll figure out college. I have Emily. I'm not alone." I watched her as she spoke, pride swelling with every word. Mom's voice on the other end was shrill and accusing, but Lily only listened for a moment before hanging up. She leaned into me, tears streaming down her face. "I did it," she whispered. "I finally said no." We sat together in the silence, relief and fear settling around us like dust. Sometimes, growing up means letting go, not just of the home that hurt you, but of the hope that things might ever go back to the way they were. That evening, Tracy brought home popsicles, blue raspberry for Lily, orange for me, and we let them melt on our fingers as we lounged in the living room, laughter chasing away the last of the day's shadows. Just as the sky began to turn gold outside our window, there was a knock at the door, a mail carrier with a large, official-looking envelope addressed to me. The return address was a law office in our hometown. My breath caught. I never thought I'd need a lawyer just to keep my distance from my own parents. But that's how summer in Aurora twisted itself, sunlit days punctuated by court threats, old fears dressed up in legal jargon and crisp envelopes. The law office's waiting room was as beige and impersonal as I'd expected, humming with fluorescent lights and a distant copier. Tracy came with me, refusing to let me face any more battles alone. Her grip on my shoulder was solid, grounding, while I clutched the envelope with shaking hands. The letter was as cold as my parents' last phone call. Official letterhead, all caps threats. They claimed I owed back rent for every month I'd lived at home since college, plus damages, scratches on the kitchen table, a chipped window pane, emotional distress. There was talk of small claims court, repayment plans, and lawyers. I felt my stomach churn with equal parts disbelief and old, worn-out dread. Dad always threatened to make me pay if I didn't fall in line, but I never thought he meant it literally. The pro bono attorney who met with us was a woman named Grace, soft-spoken but quick with questions. She scanned the letter, eyebrows arching as she flipped each page. "This is mostly scare tactics," she assured me. "Legally, your parents can't demand back rent unless there was a written agreement, and even then, what they're claiming is outlandish. I'll draft a formal response and you'll be covered. You don't owe them a cent." I exhaled for the first time in days, the tension draining from my shoulders. Grace even smiled, sliding a stack of sample letters across the desk. "They're counting on fear and confusion. You have rights, Emily. You can set boundaries." Back at the insurance office, Ms. Carter found me at lunch, hunched over a microwaved burrito and a pile of crumpled legal papers. She slid into the seat across from me and set down a Tupperware of homemade cookies, chewy oatmeal with big chunks of dark chocolate, still warm from her oven. "Hard day?" she asked gently, offering me a cookie. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She listened as I stumbled through the story, the threats, and the lawyer, the ache in my chest that never quite went away. Ms. Carter didn't offer false comfort. Instead, she shared her own experience of breaking away from a family that didn't always act like one. "It's hard to draw a line in the sand," she said, "but you have to protect your peace. People will take and take, if you let them." Her words sank in, mingling with the scent of cookies and the hush of summer rain beating softly against the office windows. When my shift ended, the sky was silver and wet, the world outside sparkling as if everything had just been washed clean. Lily met me at the park that afternoon, under the wide, leafy maples we used to ride past as kids. She clutched a paper bag from the local pawn shop. "Look what I found," she said quietly, pulling out a tarnished silver locket and the old paperback Mom used to read to us at bedtime. "They sold everything. Even this." I turned the locket over in my hand, thumb tracing the dent in its side. There was grief, yes, deep and old. But there was also relief, as if letting go of these objects loosened the hold our childhood had on us. I hugged Lily tight, both of us blinking away tears. "You don't owe anyone your peace," I told her, echoing Ms. Carter's words. "Not even Mom. Not even me. You get to decide where home is." She nodded, jaw set, her gaze fierce in the late afternoon light. "I want out. Really out, Em. I want to go somewhere nobody can find me." That evening, back at Tracy's, I made a decision. I picked up my phone and dialed Mom, heart pounding as the line rang and rang. When she answered, her voice was clipped, defensive. I listened to her demands, her guilt, her accusations, and for the first time, I didn't try to apologize or placate. "I'm done," I said softly but firmly. "I love you, but I can't keep doing this. Please don't call again unless you're ready to respect my boundaries. I hope you find peace, Mom, but I can't lose myself for you." There was silence. Then she hung up. Tracy found me on the balcony, watching city lights flicker as the rain slowed to a gentle patter. She handed me a mug of tea, her smile tired but real. "You did the right thing," she said. Inside, Lily's phone pinged. Her eyes widened as she read the message, then she let out a whoop of disbelief. Look." She spun the screen toward me, an email from a college in Oregon, full scholarship, out of state, dorm included, no family contribution needed. For a second, neither of us moved. Then we hugged, laughing and crying at once, letting the possibility of a new beginning settle in. I closed my eyes, savoring the moment, the taste of cookies, the sound of rain, the knowledge that the future, for once, was ours to choose. When Lily screamed with joy about her scholarship, I felt something inside me loosen, as if the story we'd been telling ourselves for years, about being trapped, being responsible, never quite getting out, could finally be rewritten. She spun around the apartment, her hair flying, her face bright with a kind of hope I'd almost forgotten existed. "Emily, I got it. I got the full ride." Her voice cracked with laughter and tears, and I swept her into my arms, holding her tight. All those whispered plans under covers late at night, how we'd run away together, start over, build a life with less yelling and more kindness, suddenly felt possible. For the first time, the future didn't scare me. It just felt new. We celebrated like the teenagers we never really got to be. Tracy insisted on pizza from the corner place, extra cheese, and a round of silly selfies with sauce on our faces. Ms. Carter stopped by after work with a card and a gentle smile. "Proud of you, Lily," she said, squeezing her shoulder. "And you too, Emily. You both have more grit than you know." She tucked an envelope with a gift card into Lily's hand and winked at me. "By the way, we should talk about that team lead position opening up soon." The pizza boxes stacked up on the coffee table, crusts going stale as we talked about dorm rooms, new friends, and what it would feel like to wake up somewhere nobody knew our story. I watched Lily, legs curled under her, tracing the fraying seam of her old stuffed rabbit, brought along for luck. She tried to sound fearless, but I could see the nerves behind her eyes. "What if I don't fit in?" she whispered after Tracy had gone to bed. The night hummed with cicadas, a soft chorus drifting in through the open window. "What if it's just more of the same, people expecting me to be the responsible one?" I tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're not alone, Lil. I was terrified my first week out here. I still get scared. But you get to decide who you are this time, not mom or dad. And you can always call me. Or Tracy. Or even Ms. Carter, she loves to give advice." She laughed, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Promise you'll visit?" "Absolutely. And I'll send care packages, full of bad instant ramen and cheesy cards." Tracy emerged the next morning, waving a bright purple box. "College survival kit," she announced, unpacking ramen, sticky notes, tea bags, earplugs, and a tiny cactus in a painted mug. "You can't grow without a little water and a lot of sun." Lily hugged her so hard the cactus nearly tipped over. Packing night felt both frantic and tender. We folded jeans, counted socks, and crammed textbooks into boxes. Every now and then, we'd find something, a faded t-shirt, a photo from a Halloween past, a playlist scrawled on the back of a receipt, and pause, sharing memories and laughter. "Remember when you dyed your hair purple and mom cried for a week?" Lily giggled, tucking the memory into her suitcase. After dinner, Tracy offered to drive us past our old neighborhood, one last look, just to prove we'd really left. As we turned onto our old street, the house loomed out of the dusk, looking smaller, older, lonelier than I remembered. The grass had grown wild, creeping across the porch steps. There was a foreclosure notice taped to the front door, flapping in the warm evening wind. Lily squeezed my hand. Doesn't even feel like ours anymore. No, I agreed. It doesn't. The past looked different from the outside, less like a prison, more like a story we could finally set down. Back at the apartment, I tossed a load of laundry into the washer, my mind drifting as the spin cycle started. There was a gentle peace in our little home, the scent of dryer sheets, the low rumble of city life outside, the certainty that tomorrow, everything would be different. I was wiping down the kitchen counter when my phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar. For a second, I nearly ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. "You'll never get rid of us." The word stared up at me, cold and jagged. For a moment, the old fear threatened to creep back in, the shadow of voices from another life. But when I looked up, I saw Lily and Tracy sprawled on the floor, giggling over a packing list. The world was small, safe, and ours. I set the phone aside, the hum of cicadas rising and falling outside the window, and let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, we'd really turned the page. The day we went back for the last boxes, the house felt smaller somehow. The shadows seemed longer, the echoes sharper, and the air carried the chill of late summer, too soon for autumn, but with a hint of something ending. As Tracy parked the moving van at the curb, the world outside was in bloom, neighbors' gardens blazing with sunflowers, tomatoes fat on their vines, the hum of bees drifting through open windows. All that life and color made our old house look even more faded, a place stuck between seasons. Lily and I stood at the threshold for a moment, just listening. The wind rustled through the empty rooms. The only thing left was our footsteps on the creaking floor and the distant, tinny sound of a lawnmower up the street. I remembered Ms. Carter's words from months before, "Home is where you're safe." I finally believed her. Inside, the house was nearly empty now. The living room, once overflowing with holiday clutter, shoes by the door, and half-folded laundry, felt cavernous. Only a single lamp remained, the shade askew. Dust motes drifted through the sunlight. In the hallway, the scratch on the banister was still there, a ghost of the years we slid down at as children, laughing until Mom called us for dinner. Lily's room was last. The mural we'd painted, faded clouds, stick-figure birds, was barely visible on the wall, the color softened by time. She paused at the doorway, running her hand along the chipped paint. "I used to think I'd repaint this someday," she said quietly. "Or at least bring my own kids here, show them where it all started." Her voice caught, and I squeezed her shoulder. "We'll make new memories," I promised. "Somewhere better." We packed the last of her things, a box of old books, a faded teddy bear, the blanket Mom crocheted when Lily was born. There wasn't much else worth saving. It all fit in the trunk with room to spare. Sometimes, I thought, letting go meant traveling light. Linda arrived just as we were hauling the final box out. She looked smaller than I remembered, her eyes sunken, shoulders slumped in defeat. She didn't say much, only nodded as we passed, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. There were no apologies, no words at all. Just silence, like the house itself. Lily lingered in her old bedroom, running her fingers along the windowsill, taking one last look. She stood for a long moment, breathing in the dust and sunlight, letting memory settle into her bones. Finally, she closed the door softly, no drama, no fanfare, just a gentle goodbye. Outside, Tracy waited by the van, music playing low from the radio. The air was thick with the scent of grass and summer heat. Lily climbed into the passenger seat, wiping tears from her face. I slid in beside her, and Tracy squeezed my hand before pulling away from the curb. We drove in silence for a while, the windows down, the air rushing through the cab, carrying away the last of the sadness. As the house slipped out of sight, Lily broke down, weeping openly, her shoulders shaking. I wrapped my arm around her and let her cry, whispering that it was okay, that grief was part of the process, that we would build something better from all the broken pieces. It's strange how loss can make you feel both empty and light. I watched the sunlight flicker on my face in the side mirror, the old neighborhood shrinking behind us. Every mile we put between ourselves and that house felt like a stitch closing up a wound. Back at the apartment, we unloaded the last of our things, just a few boxes, really, but they felt heavier for all they carried. Lily went straight to her new room, curling up under the blanket from home, letting her breath slow and even out. I sat on the edge of my bed, my phone in hand. The contact list stared up at me, Mom. Dad. The numbers I had memorized since childhood. My hand trembled as I hovered over delete. For years, those numbers meant obligation, fear, and hope tangled together. Now, they were just digits. I pressed the button, one after another, and watched them vanish. For a long moment, I sat there, my heart thumping. Relief trickled in, slow but sure. Outside, the last golden light of summer poured through the window, warm on my face. Tracy's laughter floated down the hall, and Lily's music played softly behind a closed door. The first morning in our new apartment, sunlight poured through the east-facing kitchen window and painted the linoleum floor gold. I stood by the stove, coffee in hand, watching Lily dance across the narrow space, her laughter echoing off the bare walls. For so long, I'd been afraid to let go, of people, of memories, of the idea that survival meant holding on tight. But now, I woke up grateful, not afraid. This place, with its chipped baseboards and thrifted furniture, was finally ours. We had survived the heavy days, and now life was slow and simple. The apartment was modest, a two-bedroom just off Main Street in Aurora, but every detail felt like a victory. Lily and I spent the weekend unpacking, setting up our mismatched dishes, pinning postcards and Polaroids to the fridge, arguing good-naturedly about where to put the thrift store armchair that Tracy insisted we needed, for character, she said. The living room still smelled of new paint, mixed with the sweet vanilla of the pancake batter burning in the pan behind me. Lily noticed before I did, swooping in to rescue the pancakes, flipping one onto a plate with a flourish. "I'm not letting you burn breakfast on our first day here," she said, grinning. First rule of the new place, no kitchen disasters before noon. We kept finding reasons to laugh. She left sticky notes everywhere, "Buy more milk, you're awesome, clean the shower." Even the smallest things felt worth celebrating. I caught her once, twirling in the patch of sunlight that fell across her new bedroom, arms wide, eyes closed. Tracy arrived around 11, juggling a bag of bagels, a tiny bouquet of wildflowers, and her usual, irrepressible energy. She hugged us both, surveyed our decorating job, and declared it a work in progress with serious potential. We squeezed around our little kitchen table, passing the syrup and swapping stories about everything and nothing, new neighbors, job drama, Lily's impending move to campus. It felt like a real brunch, the kind families in old sitcoms have every Sunday. Ms. Carter sent a message, an animated e-card with digital confetti, a simple note, "Proud of you, Emily. Enjoy your new home. Don't forget to breathe." A florist delivery knocked just after noon, leaving a vase of cheerful daisies and lilies on the front step. Lily arranged them on the counter, pausing to admire them like a prize. That afternoon, we made a budget for groceries and split up the chores, laughing at our attempts to be grown-ups. The new neighbors stopped by to introduce themselves. A young couple from across the hall brought cookies. An older woman next door lent us her favorite mystery novel. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was trespassing in someone else's life. Old letters and calls from home went unanswered now. I'd set boundaries, and to my surprise, they were mostly respected. It was a quiet, necessary distance. No more drama, no more late-night threats. If I felt a flicker of guilt or longing, I let it pass like a cloud across the sun. Lily was already packing lists for college, notebooks, laundry bags, a second-hand kettle. I helped her fill out forms and order her student ID, proud of her for chasing the future on her own terms. At work, Ms. Carter gently nudged me toward applying for the promotion. "You're ready," she said, and for the first time I believed her. One lazy evening, Lily tossed her keys on the counter and dropped beside me on the worn couch, a map spread across her lap. "Let's do a road trip before I move in," she suggested. "Just us. No plans, no family drama, just open roads and bad gas station coffee." I smiled, picturing us in a borrowed car, singing along to old songs, watching the world rush by outside the windows. That night, after Lily had gone to bed and the apartment was finally quiet, I stood by the kitchen window, cradling a mug of tea. The city glowed under a soft haze, the world hushed but alive. In the reflection, I saw a version of myself I barely recognized, steady, hopeful, free. I realized then that this was what home meant: sunlight in the kitchen, laughter bouncing off the walls, keys turning in a new lock, and the promise of morning still to come. Not perfect, but ours. As I stand in my own kitchen, sunlight warming the floor and Lily's laughter echoing through our little apartment, I realize how far we've come, not just in miles, but in courage and hope. It turns out, letting go of the past doesn't mean forgetting where you began, it means choosing kindness, for yourself and those you love, even when it's hard. Sometimes, family isn't just who raised you, but who stands beside you when life gets heavy. If we hold on to compassion and give each other room to heal, even the hardest journeys can lead to new beginnings. If this story reminded you of your own path, I'd love to hear your thoughts or memories. Thank you for sharing this time with me. May your days be filled with warmth, understanding, and a little bit of laughter.